Hey folks, Justin Cupler here with AutoGazine.com. I am in a 2017 Mitsubishi Outlander Sport SEL 2.4. This is the smallest of the Mitsubishi models. It sits just under the base Outlander, which is a mid-size 3-row crossover. This one, on the other hand, is a 2-row compact crossover. So it competes with things like the RAV4, Kia Sportage, and things like that. Now, Mitsubishi has some issues. It has had issues for some years now with quality. It's not that they fall apart on you, just the initial build quality is not as high as some other cars. That continues into this Outlander. But before I dive in and start tearing this thing apart, I gotta tell you that it's not awful. It's not completely unpurchasable terrible. It's not that. It does have some goodness to it. On the outside, for example, you have a somewhat sporty look. It's not a sports car material, don't misquote me there, but it is a sportier appearance. It also has a shorter body, so it's easy to move around, it's easy to park in spaces, you're never going to worry if it's going to fit or not. So those are a couple good things for the outside. That's the kind of people who want to buy this car. People want that slightly sportier look, and they also want a small SUV. But some of the downsides to it are those quality issues, the build quality. The doors, when you close them, they don't close with a confident thud. They instead give you a little ping, which doesn't inspire confidence as you close the doors. You also have the door handles. The door handles feel a little bit cheaper than most, so they feel as if they might actually fall apart in 10 to 12 years. They may last forever, but they do have that slightly chintzy feel to them. And also, this is a very nitpicky thing on my end, but this has a proximity key. When you walk up and you touch the door handle, it unlocks automatically. Well, instead of having the nice little touch sensor where you just put your hand on it and it opens, this has actually the rubberized button, a physical button you have to push, which, while 5 years ago that was kind of normal, now it's so normal to have just the sensor that you feel, that feels your hand touch it, that button kind of cheapens the whole experience a bit. It kind of gives you this cheap feel just from the second you get into the vehicle. Now, once you get inside the Mitsubishi Outlander Sport SEL, you have some good stuff and some bad stuff. The good stuff, let's start there. Good things, it does have leather seating, which is nice. It also has a 6.1-inch touchscreen, which is nice. The touchscreen's very responsive. It's very, you know, it's not very technologically advanced, but at least is responsive. You also have a decent 6-speaker sound system. It's not going to rattle the mirrors or anything, but it's decent sounding enough. You also have these nice little gloss black trim pieces here and there on the steering wheel or on the center bezel, in various places throughout the cabin. You also have some chrome here and there that gives it a slightly more upscale look. But one of the issues is that Mitsubishi's famous for its sea of black interior, which is exactly what this has. A big sea of black with a couple little teeny tiny chrome accents and then the gloss black. They at least contrast it a bit, but it's not enough to offset that sea of black feel. There's also this scratchy plastic all over the place. You'd think in an SEL model that costs around 24 grand, you would think they'd put some more soft touch things. You have some soft touch here around the bezel, some soft touch up by the door, but the top here, scratchy plastic down here, there's a little bit too much of that going on. In 2017, that's something that can go away. Now back to the good stuff, the rear seat is pretty roomy. 36.3 inches of legroom, you got plenty of room. But when you get behind the rear seats, you find some struggles. It only has just over 20 cubic feet of cargo room with the seats up and just shy of 50 cubic feet with the seats folded. That's kind of subpar for this class, especially the 20 cubic feet with the seats up. It does have a long loading floor with the seats up, but unfortunately the shape of the rear hatch kind of eats into the cargo room and drops it down to 20. Inside here, you also have other things that cheapen it, you know, things like the lack of navigation. $24,000 vehicle with nothing else really in it. I'd hope for it to have navigation, or at least as an inexpensive option. You can get it as an option, but it's $1,800. I went through their Mitsubishi's website to try to find what else comes with it. For 1,800 bucks, I better be getting something, damn it. Well, it's navigation. That's it. You get a navigation system for 1,800 bucks. Screw you, Mitsubishi, I'm buying a Garmin. And then you have things like the seats. Yeah, they're leather, but the leather is very, very cheap. I mean, it's not what I would call supple. It feels like the cow must have sat out for a little bit too long before they skinned it. And then you have the lack of support in the seats. The seats are super hard. There's very little bolster support. In the midsection of your back, it feels like they attempted to make some kind of lumbar support, but it's not very comfy. Your lower back starts aching pretty early into a drive. I noticed it from the second I sat in these seats. I'm like, oh my God, these things are uncomfortable. You have just some of the general cheapness. Like right here where the key goes, this has the push button start. Where the key goes, it actually has the little plate over the keyhole, which cheapens it a whole lot. Down here with the all-wheel drive control, it's instead of just replacing the center console and making it flat, they stuck a little cover over where the all-wheel control knob goes. Just little details like that cheapen the feel of this crossover. There are little things like that can really bring it up a notch, and Mitsubishi just overlooked it and left it like it is. It's just not a nice looking interior. Sorry, I don't mean to bash Mitsubishi, but it's just not a nice looking interior. I'm hoping as Mitsubishi moves forward with its partnership with Nissan, that it goes a little more upscale. It has a new Eclipse Sport Cross, or Eclipse Cross coming, which I hate the name, but I'm hoping maybe that'll have some more of these fit and finish things fixed. By looking at the images, they're not gonna do much with the styling, but maybe the fit and finish will be better. Another problem I have with this interior here is you hear everything. Every noise, every car, anything from outside, you hear it very clearly. The engine noise comes into the cabin very easily. There's almost no insulation. So again, that's part of Mitsubishi's thing. To try to keep it cheap, they limit all the insulation, keep things thin, but you have that trade-off. Now, moving on to the powertrain. This is another sore spot for Mitsubishi. Years ago, Mitsubishi had the the Evolution, which had a nasty turbocharged engine. Then they also had the Lancer, the Lancer, I cannot recall the name of it now, but it's a turbocharged version. It wasn't the Evo, but it was just a step below the Evolution. I'm sorry, it's escaping my mind right now. But they had that engine that they could have proliferated throughout its lineup, put it in different vehicles, could have put it in this car because it's not a very large engine. It's only, I think it's a 2.0 liter turbo. Oh, Ralliart, I'm sorry, that's the name of it. Mitsubishi Lancer Ralliart. That was the one with the turbocharged engine. They could have proliferated that turbocharged engine throughout the lineup, but they didn't. They left it in that car. So with this, the base Mitsubishi Outlander Sport, you get a 2.0 liter engine with 148 horsepower. Then in this SEL 2.4, you get a 2.4 liter four-cylinder with only 168 horsepower. That's not drastically underpowered, especially for this small of a crossover, but it lacks the oomph that it needs to really get up and go. What really hurts it is the CVT transmission. Many automakers have gotten better at manufacturing these CVTs. They've gotten less rubber bandy, they've got more responsive, they've started shifting more like automatic transmissions. Unfortunately, the one in the Mitsubishi Outlander does not. There is a lot of rubber banding. If you start accelerating and let your foot off the gas, it kind of drones you forward, kind of rubber bands you forward. When you try to accelerate, it's kind of hunts for the right range. So it has those issues going on that is just kind of unacceptable in 2017. The CVTs of yesteryear, yeah, you expected all that, but nowadays you don't expect the rubber banding. You don't expect the massive droning that you get. It's just the whole time it's going. And that's partly to do with the lack of insulation, but it's also the fact that this CVT doesn't adjust well, and it really affects its acceleration also. Another thing that's a bit of a disappointment is the fuel economy. You'd think with a 2.4 liter four-cylinder engine that's not overly powerful, this thing would get well over 30 miles per gallon. Unfortunately, it does not. It only gets 23 miles per gallon city, 28 miles per gallon highway, and 25 miles per gallon combined. That's pretty bad. Even for a crossover, that's very low. I don't understand why it is so low. Maybe it's a tuning of the engine. It's the fact that it has to really suck up the power to get this thing moving. I don't know, but 23 miles per gallon city and 25 miles per gallon combined. No, that's not good. That's not good, Mitsu. You got to fix this. Now, starting next year with the Eclipse Cross, which I keep mentioning because I'm a little bit antsy to see what they do with it, but the Eclipse Cross gets a 1.5 liter turbocharged engine. So my hope is that that engine becomes kind of the norm in the smaller crossover range. So I'm hoping they put that in this car, and it should have a lot more torque than this has. It should have a lot better responsiveness than this one has. And it should also increase fuel economy dramatically, especially that highway rating. The highway rating with a turbocharged engine should creep well over 30 miles per gallon. It should be 32, 33 miles per gallon combined, or highway, and even bring the city range up around 25. That'll put this around the 29 to 30 range combined, which is a lot more acceptable for this size crossover. Now, are they for sure going to bring that engine over to this lineup? I don't know. It's not confirmed, but I'm guessing. I would think that only makes sense. Now, they may try to protect that new crossover by not bringing that engine over, but I hope they do. You know, like I said, you have a lot of drone coming in here. It's not an overly powerful engine, so you have that working against it combined. Underpowered, a lot of droning, lack of insulation. It gives you a headache after driving it for so long. Handling, it's not bad. It's not terrible. It really isn't. It takes corners well, but one big issue is the steering is very numb. You feel like you're playing a video game, and it's not responsive at all. It does not live up to that sport name again. It doesn't live up to it. You have to turn the steering wheel a lot to get those front wheels to turn. So it almost feels like an old car with the steering rack the steering rack going bad, where you have to crank the wheel to get the wheel starts turning. It feels a lot like that. So it lacks that sportiness. There is a little bit of body lean in the turns, but it handles okay, like I said. The ride, it's a ride. It's terrible. It is bumpy. You feel every bump. If you roll over a pebble, you feel it. Every speed bump, you can see it in the camera as I go over speed bumps. It jostles you around, throws you around, and combining with these uncomfortable seats, you're in for a not very nice ride. But again, this thing is tuned for people looking for an inexpensive crossover, so there are some trade-offs. But a 24,000 model with the SEL, I'd expect some changes. I expect Mitsubishi to say, hey, let's maybe tweak the suspension a bit to soften it. Let's put different wheels on it and different tires on it to soften things a bit. Let's put some extra insulation in here to quiet it down a bit. You'd expect Mitsubishi to do that for the extra cash, because you're not getting much else, but they don't. They leave it as is in the base model, just with more features. So let's talk safety. Because that's big these days. Safety years ago was like, it doesn't matter, they didn't have seatbelts back in the day. Now safety is a huge thing because how many cars are on the road, there's so many accidents, the speed limits are higher than they've ever been. So in safety, this thing lacks a little bit. It does get good ratings in 4 of the 5 tests, the crash tests, but in 1, which is the small overlap test, it gets an acceptable rating. So acceptable is not terrible. Acceptable just means it's okay, it passed. We're not going to say you're going to die from a small overlap impact, but it's not as good as many crossovers are these days. So many crossovers are IIHS top safety picks, so to have one that gets only an acceptable rating, it kind of eliminates it almost immediately for people who have a family, who want their family to be safe. Also, this crossover does not have optional advanced safety features. So many crossovers now have the automatic emergency braking, lane keep assist, rear cross traffic alert, all that stuff. The only real tech feature this has in the safety realm, I'd say, has to be the rear view camera, which isn't all that great as is, because it's not dynamic. It doesn't move. The guidelines don't move along with your steering wheel. It's just 2 guidelines, they stay straight, and you have to back up using that. 5 years ago, that was the norm. But again, in 2017, pretty much every crossover now has dynamic guidelines that actually move the steering wheel to show you where the SUV is going to go, where the car is going to go as you turn the wheel and back up. So it lacks that. So it does have rear view camera, but it lacks everything else. It doesn't even have it as an option. It doesn't even have automatic emergency braking as an option. So even if it did get a good rating in the IIHS small overlap test, it could never qualify as a top safety pick because it lacks that. And also in the brand new headlight test that the IIHS is doing, it got a poor rating. And I can vouch for that. The headlights on this are awful. They don't have good range. They very clearly blind to oncoming traffic. Going around turns, you have a massive blind spot. So yeah, it definitely fails that test as well. So let's talk pricing. The Mitsubishi Outlander Sport starts for the 2.0 ES, which is very, very bare bones. There's really not much at all that comes with it. It starts at just over $19,000. But this model, the SEL, starts just over $24,000. Like I said, you're getting things like the leather seating, the 6.1-inch touchscreen, the 6-speaker audio system, keyless entry, keyless ignition, some shifter paddles back here that are utterly worthless because the CVT transmission sucks, power windows, and things like that. But the base model is super, super, super basic. Options, there's a good bit of options, but there's nothing that's going to add a lot of value. Like I said, the only option I would check off is the navigation if it wasn't $1,800 freaking dollars. Sorry, $1,800 for a navigation system is ridiculous. And it comes with nothing else, just navigation. Sorry to harp on that. So it's cheap. It is cheap, but there are many, well, not many. There are a few options and small crossovers in that range. You have the Mazda CX-3. Sure, we're going a little bit smaller than the Mitsubishi Outlander Sport, but you do have the Mazda CX-3. You have the Honda HR-V. You have the new Toyota CHR coming out. So you do have some options in that range, but you do have to go a little bit smaller. If you want in this realm, you're going over $20,000 for most of its competitors. But for over $20,000, what you're going to get, it might be worth the trade-off. So, who is the Mitsubishi Outlander Sport good for? That's a good question. I'm going to say people who want cheap transportation and don't feel like shopping anywhere else. Sorry, I can't recommend it to anyone. It's small, it's bumpy, it's loud, it's slow, it drones, has very limited features, and what options it has are ridiculously expensive. I just can't figure out who I would recommend it to. Maybe someone in college who just needs something cheap and can't get approved anywhere else. I don't know. You let me know who you think would buy it, or if you would buy the Mitsubishi Outlander Sport. I rarely see them on the road anymore, so I don't think very many people are buying them. But let me know what you think of it. If you think this is the SUV for you, the crossover for you, by all means, go check it out. But you may want to wait for that Eclipse Cross to come out. It might be a little bit better. I think it comes out in 2018. So you may want to wait for that. You know, if you can make your current car last for another year, wait for the Eclipse Cross to come out. It might be a better fit. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for checking me out. Next week, I will be back in something much more luxurious, a Lexus ES300H. So I'll be back in that next week. So check me out. Thank you so much for watching my review, and I will talk to y'all later. Ciao.